Picture this for a second. You wake up one morning, and without any warning whatsoever, your bank has abruptly frozen your accounts. Or maybe an automated AI bot from a government agency just cut off your primary source of livelihood with a single, cold, mechanical keystroke. What is your very first move? Do you panic? Get angry? Well, let's dive into this, because today's explainer is all about surviving and absolutely winning these exact types of sudden institutional crises.
To help us figure this out, we're unpacking a truly fascinating mini-guide by Stefan von Hofen titled Beat the System Without Losing Yourself. Think of this as a tactical playbook for the little guy. It's an incredibly detailed, field-tested manifesto on exactly how to fight back against those massive bureaucratic machines that can suddenly turn our lives completely upside down. Hofen draws from decades of his own intense entrepreneurial highs and lows to build a framework he calls radical resilience.
So, here's the game plan for this explainer. We're looking at 5 core pillars of radical resilience. When the system strikes, mastering your emotional response, building your defensive network, planning and radical transparency, and finally, overcoming institutional bias. Let's get right into it. All right, pillar number 1. When the system strikes, the jarring reality of institutional breakdowns. Here's the thing you really have to understand right out of the gate. When a bureaucracy strikes, it almost never acts out of personal malice. It operates on cold, mechanical grids. As an entrepreneur stepping off that secure wage earner hamster wheel, you naturally expect loyalty. You think your bank is going to recognize your courage, support your investments, and just talk to you constructively. But the institution's reality? Totally different. They focus purely on security and risk mitigation. They will reverse transactions, abruptly cut off communication, and send these aggressive demands completely out of the blue. The big takeaway here is absolutely vital. Realizing this isn't a personal failure, but just a mechanical reaction, is the first step to shifting your mindset from a complaining victim to a calculating strategist. Moving on to Pillar 2, mastering your emotional response and using calmness as a literal tool of power.
Okay, so your livelihood is suddenly threatened. The adrenaline instantly surges, right? But as Hofen explains, the moment you lose your head is the exact moment the institution wins. You have to use calmness as an active weapon. If you find yourself in a direct, face-to-face confrontation, say sitting across from a bank executive calling in a loan, Hofen outlines 3 immediate steps. Step 1, maintain focus and literally just breathe to lower your heart rate. Do not offer impulsive justifications. Step 2, use the power of the pause. In negotiations, silence is pure power. It naturally forces the other party to react to you. And step 3, exercise poised termination. If that executive isn't treating you as an equal, politely end the conversation and walk out. You leave as an active agent, not someone begging for a favor.
In this emotional control, it directly applies to your everyday life too, specifically your mail, which can be a massive source of psychological terror. Hofen actually created a strategic inbox management matrix to use time as a shield. Letters from the tax office or lawyers, open those immediately. Missing those strict deadlines triggers automated AI escalation and legal action moves fast. But general payment reminders? Delay them. They're often just designed to apply pressure, so just collect them for a specific processing day. Debt collection letters? Open them strategically. Only handle those after you are internally stabilized, so you can draft a high-quality professional response instead of an emotional one.
But wait, what happens when the pressure isn't even coming from a human? What if it's an AI bot? Hofen shares this incredible anecdote from July 2026. A trivial, unpaid parking fine triggered a tax authority AI bot to instantly, completely freeze his bank account. No warning. Instead of panicking, he fought back with deliberate, radical transparency. He wrote directly to his human caseworker, a guy he cheekily calls Mr. Brendeswersch, and he actually used AI himself to optimize his own letter. He honestly revealed his priorities, explaining that while he hadn't paid that specific fine yet, he was actively investing in professional development, proving his faith in the future. By communicating on this elite professional level, he literally forced the caseworker to drop the mechanical mask and see the whole situation from a human perspective.
Which brings us to Pillar 3, building your defensive network, or the math of power and social proof. Listen, when a crisis hits, isolation is your absolute biggest risk. An isolated citizen is basically easy prey for a bureaucracy. A strong community, on the other hand, is a defensive wall that these institutions actually fear. Hofen calls this the power of 100. The math here is beautifully simple. Every genuine friend or advocate you have is a gateway to at least 100 more people in their network. By actively maintaining your visibility and building this regional grassroots base way before a storm even breaks, you ensure that if an institution tries to ruin your reputation, you have a literal army ready to push back.
So how do you practically deploy this network? Through what Hoffman calls the observer effect. Rule number 1, never go to a hostile official meeting alone. Bring witnesses. But, and this is crucial, choose witnesses with high social status, like a local journalist or a respected public official. The very second an agency realizes they are being watched and documented by credible people taking notes, their entire tone shifts. The negotiation instantly moves from an emotional plea for help to a strictly professional discussion based on facts. You completely neutralize the bureaucratic shadows just by shining a high-status light right on them.
All right, Pillar 4, planning and radical transparency. Basically, making yourself impossible to ignore.
If your network is your defensive wall, then your paperwork is your shield. This is all about meticulous professional preparation. You can actually trace this resilient evolution across Hoffman's own incredibly diverse career. He went from running a mobile delicatessen, Rainer's Bavarian Finkkost, to becoming the published author of the novel Die unendliche Geschichte zweier Lebende. Those are wildly different ventures, right? But his anchor was always exactly the same, a rock-solid 28-page business plan. Even when he hit severe financial hardship and had to apply for state benefits, that comprehensive business plan proved he wasn't just some supplicant asking for a handout. It proved he was a professional actively managing growth, even in the hardest of times.
And there's a fascinating psychological trick Hoffman emphasizes when writing these plans. Always use the first person. Never write, the entrepreneur intends to. Always write, I will. Why? Because bankers and bureaucrats, paradoxically, invest in the actual human being taking responsibility behind all those numbers. Writing in the third person makes you look defensive. Writing I will is an authentic, powerful door opener that commands absolute respect.
But to back up that professional intent, you have to maintain what he calls documentary excellence. This isn't just boring admin work. It's literally your armor. Log every single phone call. Securely archive all your correspondence. And this is a huge one. Secure alternative proof of payment. If the bank freezes your account, European case law is actually on your side if you can prove you intended to pay through a third party, like a family member. By documenting this intent, you forcefully shift the conflict out of some arbitrary closed-door bank office and into the completely neutral arena of a courtroom, where facts actually win out.
And that leads us to our final pillar, number 5, overcoming institutional bias and defeating the system's labels. We know how it is. You step into a government agency, and boom, you are instantly categorized. At the trade office, you might be treated as an esteemed high achiever. Walk into the social welfare office, you're instantly labeled a defensive petitioner. To show just how dangerous this bias can be, Hoffman shares this deeply personal, intense climax from his time in the UK. A child protection agency unfairly targeted his family. Through a series of just absurd observations, the system actually escalated things to the point where a court-appointed psychologist slapped a totally false schizophrenia diagnosis on his wife, Gadina. They were trying to completely strip her of her legal agency. Sitting back and accepting that is, as Hoffman puts it, a slow form of suicide. In moments like that, you have to use the initiative trick.
The initiative trick is simple. Never, ever rely on the experts the system forces on you. So Hoffman took massive action. He researched and hired an unquestionable independent luminary, Professor Dr. Schmude, an absolute titan in the field of psychology. But here is the real stroke of genius. Schmude didn't evaluate Gadavana in some sterile, intimidating clinical trap. He evaluated her in a real-world public setting, a busy restaurant. By observing her actual social competence out in the real world, the expert entirely dismantled the court's institutional bias. He proved her integrity, she instantly regained her legal rights, and Hoffman completely reclaimed the narrative through strategic external expertise.
Ultimately, all of these tactics feed into one central ethos, and that is radical resilience. Hoffman didn't learn this theory sitting at a desk. He learned it the hard way, by taking over his late father's bookkeeping while cramming for his own exams back in 1988. He learned it by pushing through the tragic loss of his loyal brother and business partner, Rainer. When the world around you collapses, giving up simply isn't an option. You grit your teeth, you apply the structure, and you just keep going.
So, there is the playbook. From mastering your adrenaline and building an impenetrable defensive network to deploying the initiative trick against severe institutional bias. Remember, the system is just a machine, but you are the architect of your own life and your own defense. The tactics are right there in front of you. So the only question left to ask yourself is this: will you let the system write your story, or will you write your own?